Good evening. This is Jose Vega coming to you once again. I do these live streams every Friday. If you are new here, if this is your first time joining a live stream, I know I called the title to this live stream an introduction to what we're prepared to do. So I expect a lot of you may be coming on here for the very first time. And the way this goes is I always give an introduction. So we do a weekly class series where we read Edgar Poe. But given that there are many different things happening in the course of this week, so for example, some of you might have seen that yesterday I was either going around Forest houses or going to this press conference with Anthony Aguilar. I've been a little busy, and what we've been doing is we've been basically just putting the pedal to the metal. We are not letting up, and we are just going. And your support and your contribution has allowed us to continue to be out in the streets, to continue to move and mobilize. So for that, I want to thank all of you. One thing that I will say here before we bring Dennis Speed in is I want to catch you all up on something. This is something that you probably will not have heard unless you were on the International Peace Coalition call today, or if you were paying attention to international news. I hope a lot of you didn't get caught up in the Eric Adams press conference where he announces he is not going to drop out of the race, thus leaving it to still 4 candidates in the mayoral race. Instead, allow me to present to you something else that is going on beyond just what's happening here in New York. See, New York City is composed of about 8 million people altogether. Now, 8 million people compared to the entire population of the world, which I believe is now at 7.9 or 8 billion people, is nothing. So what if I told you that representatives of 42% of the entire human population met earlier this week at 2 places, one place called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and another place in China, celebrating the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. And what this was we saw Putin, Xi Jinping, and Modi, some of the biggest leaders of the world, who command big populations, especially between Xi Jinping and Modi. Right there, that right there is about 35% of the population. That's about almost 3 billion people between those two countries. And what was discussed, and the other thing you have to know is that there have been many attempts from the so-called Western forces to try and divide these leaders. And the fact that Modi and Xi Jinping in particular walked in together, holding hands and discussing, sent a very clear message to the world. You're not going to divide us. And what was discussed was big, major economic programs. See, none of this was conniving or conspiring against the West or the United States. No, they actually make sure to always clarify they're not anti-Western. They're not anti-American. They would welcome a day when the United States could be there, joining them at the world stage, ready to cooperate with them, to build economic projects with them. Not to host military bases around the world or be imperialist or anything like that. No. See, the Russians are allowing and being patient with the United States to allow for there to be real economic cooperation. So anyway, what you saw at these 2 meetings was a commitment for a future, for a very real future. And this is something that's really exciting. I was personally looking into today expanding some of my infrastructure and transportation policies. I was talking with one of the LaRouche basement team people named Jason Ross, who recently did a class, and we were talking about how can we go forward? What does restructuring American transportation look like? Why can't we have a high-speed rail network in the country, or for that matter, even a maglev rail network in the country? What does it actually take to do these things? And you realize one of the things that I was calling for is an interborough express train line. And it was actually announced in 2022 by Kathy Hochul that they'll do this. And 3 years later, this year, actually just last month, they announced that they've hired an engineer to calculate the feasibility of this. See, so they're committed to spend $5 billion to make this happen. But see, they don't estimate an interborough train line, that is a train line from the Bronx to Queens to Brooklyn, to be done until maybe 2035, 2036. So that is 11 years. That is 11 years before we can possibly have an interborough train line. So what is this, right? Where in places like New York City, where we drastically need big infrastructure projects, or the entire country here in the United States, where in the 1930s it seemed like Roosevelt didn't wait for anybody. I learned that the Empire State Building was built in just under 400 days in the 1930s, or even before that. It was built just under 400 days. Now there has to be studies, environmental impacts, all kinds of things done before you can even consider building any kind of infrastructure program. So you look at these other parts of the world and they're talking about doing intercontinental travel plans. They're talking about, building gas pipelines between one country and another, exporting goods, building rail lines, and they're talking about getting this stuff done within the decade, if possible. You're talking about multi-country bureaucratic stuff that they have just figured out. We got to get this stuff going because there's a real commitment for the future. And that mentality, that vision is what was discussed at the International Peace Coalition call today by Helga Zepp-LaRouche, because she put out a call for people, an urgent call, that people can go to the Schiller Institute and sign, where it's an urgent appeal to Xi Jinping, to Putin, and to Trump, saying we have to abandon this Cold War mentality because it's going to kill us. See, that's what all the imperial propaganda that you see is about. You turn on CNN, you turn on MSNBC, and you see former Congressman Jamal Bowman talking about how Putin is an authoritarian or Xi Jinping is an authoritarian and Trump just wants to be just like them. See, I'm not saying Trump is a great president or anything like that, but he's clearly being manipulated away from ever working with Xi Jinping and Putin. And the flank here is for Americans to urge the United States and for the office of the presidency to decide to work with these world leaders. That is a real path forward. That is peace through development. And that is something that I am bringing here to the United States as a whole and to the world. And the people of the Bronx, I believe, will understand that and are understanding that. If you've been seeing some of my videos of me out in the street talking to people, this is some of the stuff that I talk to them about. Regardless, today we're going to do things a little bit differently, given some of the events that we have coming up. For example, we have some stuff coming up on September 15th. Dennis Speed will be talking about that more. In fact, I am now going to bring in Dennis so that he can take it from here. All right. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, okay. Well, very good. And thanks a lot, Jose, for the way that you opened up. Let me just say a few things to people about why we do what we do each week and give an example. We are interested in the author, Edgar Poe, because he represented something that was being created in the United States from pretty much the beginning of the country. He was born in 1809. And the United States becomes officially the United States in 1789. There's a United States of America, but it doesn't have its constitution until 1789. So basically, he's born 20 years after the country actually has its constitution. And he lives for 40 years. And at the time that he is writing, there's a big problem. The problem is that the country has already begun to stray away from the original ideas that helped to found it. And what's happening is he's working with a group of people. James Fenimore Cooper is one of the people. Washington Irving is another person. Samuel Morse is another one. And these are names that are associated with literature. In the case of James Fenimore Cooper, he wrote a bunch of books, all set in New York. The Leatherstocking Tales. In the case of Washington Irving, he's often referred to as the first great writer from America. Again, most of his stuff is set around Ossining, New York, and West New York City, and so on. And then Poe. Poe was not from New York, but he spent a lot of time in New York because he went to West Point. He also lived on 84th Street. He lived downtown in the Village area, and he finally lived at the end of his life in the Bronx, about 3 miles from where our office is presently located. These figures were trying to create a revolutionary culture in the aftermath of the revolution to preserve the original idea. And that idea was anti-colonial. It was to fight not only for freedom of movement and freedom of economy, but freedom of thought, the freedom to be creative. And in American history, there were a lot of people who were imbued with that. They were imprinted with that. A lot of people like to say, oh, well, America has all the problems that it apparently, slavery, people make lists of various problems. But there's something else about America, which is that it's the first nation in which you have a deliberative process among a large number of people, particularly around the Constitution. For example, the New York Post was founded by Alexander Hamilton so that the people of New York could debate and discuss a set of papers that he wrote, John Jay wrote, and James Madison wrote. They were called the Federalist Papers. And the idea was that they were published in as wide a number of copies as possible through this newspaper. And the New York Post is that newspaper that he founded at that time. Obviously, it's a lot different now than it was. But as a result, there was a kind of quality to the American, which was different than it was for most of the people in Europe. And we're going to say that that quality is called the quality of intervention. The idea that an American stands up in the face of opposition and fights for that which is right. We're going to use an example. Poe was an example of that himself, but that's in literature. But I'm going to give an example because Jose talked about the conferences that are going on and still going on, by the way, in Asia. The conference that went on, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Then there was the Beijing commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the Second World War. And then now there is a conference going on in East Asia, mainly in Vladivostok. 70 nations are there, and there's a lot of discussion about economic development. So these are momentous events that often we miss. The United States right now, the American people are missing one of the most important events in history. This is not unusual. It happened 70 years ago, 70 years ago, and it was a New York State congressman who stood up against that tide of stupidity and ignorance. And his name was Adam Clayton Powell. Let's show his picture, and then we'll go to some things he said. I have very good. So here's what he had to say 70 years ago. In 1955, the Department of State deliberately and calculatedly imperiled the future of the United States of America for perhaps the rest of our lives. It did so despite advice from me, which every subsequent event of history has more than supported. On April 19th, 1955, for the first time in the history of the world, 29 nations of Africa and Asia met together at Bandung, Indonesia. Since then, the number of independent nations in that area of the world has climbed to form the largest bloc in the United Nations. The United States deliberately boycotted that Bandung meeting. The administration did everything possible to prevent any American from going. Finally, when I decided to go at my own expense, they used every method to dissuade me, but I went. I went in the face of organized resistance from the Department of State. I wired President Eisenhower suggesting that a goodwill mission be sent. On February 16th, I was shocked to receive as my reply a copy of a memorandum to the White House from the Department of State. Quote, "The United States will not be a participant. We will have no plans to send observers, and Congressman Powell should not be encouraged in his apparent hope to attend the conference as an observer." Now, that's exactly what we just went through with respect to China this week. And there wasn't just America. Nobody from Europe, with the exception of former heads of state, actually went to that commemoration of the end of World War II. No head of state except one, Fico from Slovakia. You may remember that this guy got shot 5 times and lived. This was about a year and a half ago. So he's kind of not afraid of anything. So he went and he was there and he met with Putin and met with Xi Jinping and so on. But nobody else showed up, and the United States didn't have any official. They may have allowed somebody from the embassy to go, but and Donald Trump did say something to the conference, but he, of course, did not go either. So I'm going to finish this a statement from Powell. He said, until this moment, till the moment that he was told he couldn't go, he shouldn't go, he said, I had not decided to attend. But when I realized that our government's stupidity would not allow them to send an observer to this, one of the most significant conferences in our time, I then informed the White House that I was going to Bandung anyway, and that I was going to pay my own way. Now that's enough, because it tells you something about Adam Clayton Powell. Powell at that time was one of only two Black people in the Congress of the United States. There was nobody Black in the Congress of the United States from 1896 to sometime in the 1930s, sometime around about 1938. So there was a period of time of about 42 years when nobody Black in the Congress of the United States at all, because of segregation and because of the removal of the revolutionary legislatures of South Carolina, Alabama, and other states, North Carolina, where you had largely Black legislatures right after the War of 1861 to 65. But that only lasted from about 1868 until about 1876, about an 8-year period, which was the most revolutionary period in American history in terms of how our legislatures actually worked. Nothing like that has been remotely seen in America again to this day. And it's worthwhile for you to take a look at that. But the thing about Powell that should be said, besides the fact that he was the minister of what was one of the largest churches of America. His father had built the church, Adam Clayton Powell Sr., but he was then the descendant minister. Is that Powell had a quality of poetry. What we're going to do is show you a video of Powell, and it captures his philosophy, if you want to put it that way, and his approach to the idea of intervention. Obviously, he had intervened here. He's going to go to Bandung, and he intervened against the Congress and the State Department. But this shows you him in action up in, I believe this is taken in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I think. So why don't we just roll this?
As I know here, you're in trouble, where it says about 30% are unemployed. That's why I'm working hard to get this surplus food here. Some of you say to me, well, I'm not like you. I'm not a congressman. I haven't got education. I haven't got work. But you're a human being. And you know what you've got? You've got in your hand the power to use your vote and to use even those few cents you get from welfare to spend them only where you want to spend them. A young slave boy stood one day before the greatest ruler of his day. And God said to Moses, what's in your hand? And Moses said, Lord, only I've got a stick, that's all. He said, well, let me use what's in your hand. And God used that slave boy with a stick in his hand to divide the Red Seas, march through a wilderness, bring water out of rocks, manna from heaven, and bring his people to freedom land. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? George Washington Carver, who was so frail that he was traded for a broken down horse as a slave boy. And George Washington Carver, sitting in the science laboratory at Tuskegee, told me, he said, Dr. Powell, he said, I just go out in the fields each morning at 5 o'clock, and I let God guide me. And I bring back these little things and work them over my laboratory. And that man did more to revolutionize the agricultural science of peanuts and of cotton and sweet potato than any other human being in the field of agricultural science. What's in your hand? Just let God use you, that's all. What's in your hand? I've got a string in my hand, that's all, and I'm flying a kite. And way up in the heavens, lightning strikes it. And I, Benjamin Franklin, discover for the first time the possibilities of electricity with a string in my hand. What's in your hand? Little hunchback sitting in a Roman jail? I haven't got anything in my hand but an old quill pen, but God says, write what I tell you to write. Paul wrote, I have run my race with patience. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth is laid up for me with honor. What's in your hand, little boy? All I've got is a slingshot. And the enemies of my people are great and big and more numerous than we are. Well, little David, go down to the brook and pick out a few stones and come on back and close your eyes if you want to and pull back that slingshot and let it go. And David killed the biggest enemy, the leader of the giants, against his people, and his people became free, just letting God guide a stone in his hand. And a few years passed, and David is a king. And God says, what's in your hand? He said, I've got a harp in my hand. He said, well, David, play on your harp. And he played, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Leadeth me beside still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? Man hanging on a cross. I've got 2 nails in my hand. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraws thyself from me, whither shall I go? And that man with 2 nails in his hand split history in half, BC and AD. And what's in your hand tonight, people of Cambridge? You've got God in your hand, and he'll let you win because he's on your side and one with God, always in the majority. So walk with him and talk with him and work with him and stick together and fight together. And with God's hand in your hand, the victory will be accomplished here sooner than you dreamed, sooner than you hoped, sooner than you prayed for, sooner than you imagined. Good night and God bless you.
United States Congress. And you may notice there's a poetic principle. It's called the refrain. I won't point out really too much about that, but it's what's in your hand, which is repeated continually. That's a poetic device. And Poe, in particular, was very taken with that poetic device. But importantly here is the idea of intervention. And that's what you're seeing with Powell. That's what he was like. And that is the reason for what we do here each week. And tonight, we're going to spend a little bit more time on this principle of intervention, something with which Jose Vega has become pretty identified. And I think we have 2 or 3 examples of that, if I'm correct. And you can think about tonight as a kind of where the refrain is intervention.
Yes, I will pull up the first one here. This is of 2 people who were at the International Peace Coalition call. At least they called in to give us a little bit of a report. So I'm going to now play that. This is Colonel Anthony Aguilar. So you may know him because of the whistleblowing that he's done against the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. And of course, you know, he's a Green Beret. He served in military for a large part of his life. And now he's a whistleblower. And you'll see him there with Josephine Guilbeault, who is also former military, both of them in uniform, interrupting a hearing. I believe this was for the ambassador of Tanzania. So let's see here. I'm going to now play this.
The United States government is complicit in genocide. You have an obligation to the Constitution of the United States. I'm a disabled veteran.
There's a genocide! There's a genocide! Stop!
You are all complicit in genocide.
Ma'am, you're not allowed to film in here. We told you this earlier. You're complicit in a genocide! You're complicit in a genocide! Eddie! There's a genocide, Eddie! Eddie, there's a genocide! Come on, Eddie! There's a genocide! You are complicit in genocide of the Palestinian people! You are complicit! Come on, Eddie! Eddie, help us! Eddie, help us save them! Come on, Eddie! The Israeli terrorists are committing a genocide, and the U.S. Congress and Senate are complicit in funding the bombs that are forcing children to be slaughtered and massacred. Shame on this government. The United States of America is complicit in genocide. The Israeli terrorists are forced starving children.
If they'll arrest veterans, they'll arrest you.
Stop the bombs! Stop the bombs! Stop! Shame on you! You're complicit! This is your legacy! This is your legacy! Why are they arresting you?
They're arresting us for speaking out against genocide.
Stop the bombs!
The U.S.
Stop
Congress
the bombs!
is paying for the death of children,
Slaughtering babies!
women and children.
Stop slaughtering babies! We are being arrested right now for interrupting a foreign affairs hearing on nominations because the U.S. is complicit in genocide. They are complicit in the slaughter of babies.
When the United States Congress comes after veterans, they will come after you. Every American sitting at home right now needs to realize that you are paying for a genocide. Take this one.
Rise up, America, rise up. It is time to take back this country from these corrupt politicians. It is time. It is beyond time.
We're going out to the voting now.
Thank you for your service.
All right, so that was Josephine Guilbeault and, of course, Anthony Aguilar. And I have one more here. This is Ray McGovern. Now, I don't know if I'm going to play this whole thing because the whole thing is 6 minutes long, but I think I'll probably just play about the first couple minutes of it. For those of you who don't know, Ray McGovern is another frequent guest of the International Peace Coalition call. He is also often on Judge Napolitano's show. He was actually on Judge Napolitano just a few hours before this show here. So I am now going to play his intervention and against Senator Mark Kelly, which kind of sucks because Mark Kelly was an astronaut. You know, you would think a guy like that would know better, but you know, I guess not. So anyway, Mark Kelly, by the way, sits on the Intelligence Committee, and Dennis may remember I was at the committee hearing when they were confirming Tulsi Gabbard, and Mark Kelly was one of the people grilling her. I think because he was saying that Assad was an agent, a Putin agent, or something like that. So, anyway, that's my experience with Mr. Kelly. Regardless, here is Ray McGovern intervening on Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and I don't think I'll play the whole thing, but here we go.
Intelligence Committee. I was a combat veteran in infantry and started.
Just real quick, I want to apologize that it is low volume. I should have anticipated that. I apologize. But just turn your volume up if you can to hear it. And actually, maybe I'll do Ray a favor here, and I will boost it for him once the stream is done, and we'll repost it. So anyway.
At Fort Bragg, airborne all the way. 27 years at the Central Intelligence Agency as an analyst of Russia. Now, even a broken clock can be right twice a day. Trump, as now is very clear from documentary evidence, he was right about the Democrat deep state media conspiracy to play the riddle that Russia, for some reason, preferred Trump to Hillary Clinton. My question is this. There is a deputy national intelligence officer who tried to blow the whistle to say that John Brennan, whom I know personally, head of the CIA, and James Comey of the FBI were deliberately lying about Russia favoring Hillary Clinton and wanting her to win. And they did that consequentially because most Americans, I dare say most of you, believe that the Russians are evil incarnate, and that if Trump said, let's go into Ukraine, you probably would support it because you're brainwashed. My question is that there was a national intelligence. May I have it?
Quiet down, folks. I'm interested in the question.
Okay. The question is I was a national intelligence. It's about as high as you can get. Okay? She tried to whistleblow, and she came to your committee and said, look, these guys are lying through their teeth about Russiagate, and you wouldn't see her, and neither would anyone on your. You know the name. I don't know the name, but you know the name, or you have the power to find the name.
Can I comment? Hey, sir, hold on. Quiet down, folks. I just want to make a comment on what you said. So, you sit down for a second. So, I do have the power to find out who that person is.
Why haven't you? Why haven't you?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh.
So let me just say this on the whole, you know, the influence that other countries have in our election system. So it is becoming a huge problem. In the last election, let me give you the statistics on this. If you're reading something about our elections as we're approaching an election date like in November, let's talk about the last presidential election. About 30% of what you see online, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, is either the Chinese, the Russians, or the Iranians. We know that, and we follow it rather closely. And we discuss this on the committee all the time, on the Intelligence Committee, Democrats and Republicans, and we talk a lot about what we can do about it. Now, one thing we have decided that is in the best interest of our democracy is not to try to say things are necessarily true and false, but try to point out when things are coming from another country. And we do that. But I will tell you this, and you could ask the Republicans on the Intelligence Committee, they'll give you the same answer as all the Democrats. In the last election, the one we just had where Donald Trump was legitimately elected president, the Russians wanted him to be elected. Now, the Iranians wanted Donald Trump to lose and Kamala Harris to win, and the Chinese just wanted disruption in our election system. They also get involved more specifically in down ballot. They didn't seem to have a preference. But these countries, as you might expect, any country clearly has a preference. And they want, if they have the ability, they're going to try to put some influence on our electoral process. It is becoming a challenging situation for us. So whether or not you want to say this is a conspiracy, when you use the word conspiracy,
You haven't answered the question. Answer the question. Why can't you get her name? Why won't you get her name? Well, it's high time you ask, because it's
you want me to call somebody right now?
that would be a good idea.
I'll wait till I get in the car.
That you know, just I mean, that kind of stuff gives me hope. You know, Ray is 86 years old now. Is that right, Dennis?
Yes.
That's right. He just turned 86 years old just a couple weeks ago. And you know, what you saw was two interventions from two different styles of intervening. And let me just explain a couple things here. So one, Ray McGovern is going after the senator because the senator knows a piece of information that is being suppressed. And so he's clearly lying about it. And but even better is that the audience didn't know about this. And that takes guts because Ray McGovern turned around and said, all of you probably think Russia stole the election in 2016 and 2020 and 2024, you know. And what Ray did there was, when the senator refused to answer the question, I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And of course, the thing that the senator said about the Russians and the Iranians, that they all have a favorite as to who they want to win elections. Come on. It's a lie. And it's just a gross mischaracterization of it's a gross mischaracterization of other countries' intentions, because the only provocateur actor who takes sides in other countries' elections is actually the British. It's actually the British. And we, the United States, are just there to help and aid whatever the British want us to do, at least the forces that have hijacked our government. We are acting on behalf of a actual imperial nation when we are not that. Now, regardless, no, what you actually see the other intentions of countries is you see what happened at the SEO summit. You see what happened at the 80th anniversary of the ending of World War II. and the ongoing meetings that are happening now, and the fact that they continue to ask and plead if America will join them with this. So regardless, Dennis, I know you have to get going, so I want to give you the last word here before we have to sign off.
Well, you may have a little bit more, and you may also have a little bit of discussion from the people who were with you, but I'll just say two things. You said there were two kinds of intervention. Actually, there were three, actually four, because Powell's address to the people of Cambridge is an intervention, because you have people all the time saying what they can't do. And his point is, well, what's in your hand? And in each of the cases that he gave, it seems to be absurd. I have a stick in my hand. How come that is the basis, Moses's basis with the staff to lead people out of slavery? Well, I have some stones in my hand. Well, why is that the basis to kill Goliath, the giant? I have a string in my hand. I discover electricity with a string in my hand. Because it's not merely what's in your hand, it's the brain, it's the mind rather, attached to the hand. And if there's an intention to do something, then you can do anything, particularly in America. Now the idea that that's not true is where the enemy is. And the conception here is to see that when we are looking at poetry, you look at somebody like Edgar Poe, what he was doing with his writing, with his stories in particular, was he was ridiculing the same thing that Ray McGovern went after. Now, remember, we are coming into this after, this is a Democratic Party meeting, first of all. And when Ray turns around to the audience, he's just not arbitrarily turning around to them. There's already been a discussion about Russia. And you can see from what this congressman is saying, he's saying a third of what's published is coming from Iran, China, and Russia. Why? Nothing's coming from Great Britain. Nothing's coming from France. Nothing's coming from any other country. What about the United States and the percentage of disinformation that the United States will put out in a given election any place else? Now, granted, he chose not to talk about that. But what you want to see here is that Ray was doing something. That's why he got so happy when he got the man to Kelly to say that he would make the phone call, because he's doing it because he feels pressured by the audience. But Ray knows that any such exposure then gets you to another level. And what's important is to understand that in the politics that we're right now involved in the United States, whether that be what we're doing on the question of Palestine, what we're trying to do on the question of economic development, what we are actually saying about the problem of cryptocurrency and stablecoin, and the way in which that both of them are being used to loot the American population, to rip people off. See, those are the kinds of things that go right up against what people assume. And you got to do that if you're actually going to make a difference. I think we may have a couple of other things, Jose, which I had asked that perhaps there might be a recitation of one of Poe's poems. I think you've got somebody there that's going to do that. And maybe there's some questions that you can just take, or others can take or give comment. Yeah, that'll be it for what I.
Sure. Here's one comment that I think is a direct result of somebody said they blame everyone but themselves. I think the they being the general public is who this person is responding to.
In Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, the line from Cassius to Brutus, he says, "The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars." In other words, not in our destiny, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. In other words, slaves. So that's just something, yeah. So Shakespeare agrees with that.
All right. So I see the person who's doing the recitation is here. So I'll add him in. And Dennis, I want to thank you for, again, coming in here every week, inspiring people to go out and act. And let's bring in Kynan here, and I'm going to take you down, Dennis.
Yeah.
All right. So you're reciting a poem for us, Kynan.
Yeah, I am.
Great.
Yeah, so we don't have time for a full story today as we usually do, but this poem that I wanted to recite is called The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Poe, and it was written in about 1843 and published in the Graham magazine. And I'll give you my sense of it, of what I think is actually going on in the poem. It's actually, there's a stage and there's a play happening, and the spectators are actually angels. And the play itself is actually presenting humanity, and it's a tragedy because humanity, towards the end of the play, is consumed by this giant worm and destroyed. And the thing that Poe talks about is that humanity is kind of led astray by the bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro. And he also mentions madness, sin, and horror as being the soul of the plot. And you know what I guess Dennis was just mentioning earlier about Julius Caesar, and it's not the fault that's in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings, I think, which is kind of the subject of the poem, in that, you know, it's the folly of people which leads them to their inevitable doom. And of course, we can prevent that. And I don't think the poem in itself is nihilistic or saying, you know, that this is inevitable, but that we need to correct our axioms and lead the path towards a better future. So anyways, I'll recite it now. The Conqueror Worm. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight in veils, and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes, in the form of God on high, mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly. Mere puppets they, who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings invisible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chase forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the selfsame spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rides from out the scenic solitude. It rides, with mortal pangs the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all. And over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm.
Well, personally, it hasn't happened yet, so I think it's a warning.
Yeah.
Over an observation. But obvious, and I was also thinking about the all the world's a stage. I mean, I think this is also a reference to the Shakespeare, right? And the conqueror worm, because we all, I mean, this is what I think, Kynan. You can tell me what you think or not, but the conqueror worm, right? The conqueror worm is the hero because it eventually kills. Because when we all go to the ground, right, we just get eaten up by worms.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right that it's a warning. And it's not presenting some kind of inevitable doom. That's what I kind of saw from how people interpreted the poem. This is like Poe's nihilistic view of humanity, you know, the upcoming apocalypse, and that man is just doomed and has no free will to control any events. But no, I think it's a warning. I think he's I don't know what the circumstances are, but I mean, we could certainly see it today, you know, with the rules-based order, the coming fall of this imperial order, you know, that they want to prevent this from happening. And with that, you know, they're kind of making the way for their own inevitable demise. So that's what I think the subject of the poem is.
Yeah, and I mean, also, you know, the angels aren't like, they're not people. They're just there to watch. Like, they're not intervening on this. You know, so like, what is an angel? I've been told to ask, like, where does the phrase "the better angels of our nature," like, where does that come from? Who used that phrase? Yeah. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble blow, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and flow. Wow, yeah, this is great. Yeah, no, this is a great poem, and I think it perfectly rounds out what we were discussing here, and like the warning of people if they decide to be spectators rather than people who intervene. Yeah, you know, so anyway, before I get off here, I should probably tell people about our upcoming events, which is the September 15th. So we're actually having a rally, which I'm trying to pull up the graphic for right now. Let's see, here, it's there. Here we go. This is going to be at Dag Hammer. Well, this is the event that was posted here up on. Oh, okay, hold on. And do this. Let's do this, and then I think here we go. Yeah, great. So this was put up by the IPAC people, the Integrity Political Action Committee people. This is happening September 15th at New York City at 12 p.m. Near the United Nations, and we're asking people to come out. This is going to be Josephine Guilbeault and also Anthony Aguilar, and we will be there. So if you want to come out and support our list of demands as well as what we're doing at the United Nations, people should definitely come out and do that. We are kicking off, of course. We have canvassing going on very, very repeated and often. And if you want to sign up and volunteer with us to go out into the streets, you can join us at votevega.nyc. I am proud to say that our new website is almost done. I've been working on it all day nonstop. So that'll be coming up very soon. So people will be able to see. And Kynan, who is just hearing this for the first time, has to write more of our policy because he's also the policy director of the campaign. And of course, you need to donate. If you like the videos of me being out on the street, I've published 2 so far, and both of them have gotten a lot of good reception and have gone viral. And you want to see me continue to do that, continue to support and contribute the campaign. That's the other thing that's going to come with the new website. With the new website, you'll have the ability to make it even easier, not just to contribute, but to be a monthly contributor. Let me tell you something. We operate on a very big weekly expense budget. You know, we have a $4,000 a week expense, right? That's just to keep us going and alive. And because of all of you, we have exceeded that for the last couple of weeks, but we need you to help us keep going. Ritchie Torres has $13 million cash on hand. That man hasn't even started campaigning yet. He hasn't even lifted a finger yet. So if you want to see me in the Congress and you want to see Ritchie Torres taken down, the only way to help us, beyond just volunteering, beyond just going out in the streets, beyond just telling neighbors what to do, is to contribute to our campaign. We have to maintain our base of operations, and we have to go above and beyond it if we want to be a real force to be reckoned with. So with that, I want to thank all of you for coming on to our live stream, and I will see all of you again shortly.